Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the OLLI at Stony Brook University lecture series. My name is Brianne Delegati, and I'm the director here for OLLI. I'm thrilled to be joined by Martin Levinson, who is a beloved workshop leader here at OLLI and also gives many presentations at local libraries. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today and encourage you that if you do not wish to have your image included in today's recording, to please go ahead and turn off your camera at this time. Otherwise, I'm now going to turn it over to Marty, who's going to give us a presentation on social media. So take it away, Marty.
Well, thank you, Brianne. As you can see, I'm in San Francisco. Just kidding, that's the Golden Gate Bridge, and I was in San Francisco, but of course with virtual media, you don't know where a person is, which is fine. At any event, Marty Levinson, I do a lot of Zoom lectures on social media. I'm not on, well, some on social media, but on other topics too. And if you get the OLLI schedule, which your members you do, monthly, check it out because I submit my schedule to them, and you might want to show up for one of my Zoom lectures. Anyway, this one's going to be about how social media disconnects us, and I want to first start out with a disclaimer. This is my opinion. This is not an OLLI opinion. This is not a Stony Brook opinion. So if you want to sue me. Don't go after the university or OLLI. They're just giving me a platform. Okay, so as I said again, the title is how social media disconnects us, and of course that's been a lot in the news. I mean, a lot of articles about that. Certainly recently, I'll start out with an intro about what's happening with kids, your grandchildren or whatever. But we are in the midst of a teen mental health crisis. The number of teenager and young adults with clinical depression more than doubled between 2011 and 22. The suicide rate for teenagers nearly doubled from 207 to 2019 and tripled for 10 to 14-year-olds in particular. According to the CDC, nearly 25% of teenage girls made a suicide plan in 2021. So the question is, what's going on in the lives of teenagers that's produced such a startling uptick? So in the view of Jean Twenge, she's a research psychologist and the author of iGen, a book called Generations, which I've recently read and highly recommend. The story and the data are clear, she says. Our teenage mental health crisis is the direct product of the rise of smartphones and social media. So that's what's happening with the kids. And I suspect she's onto something there because, if you notice among young people, they're on social media all the time. And in a way, there are articles have been written about this, losing the ability to connect in real life. And of course, that's a problem. So what I'm going to do is show you a PowerPoint, talk about things, to give you enough time. It's a small enough group so we can have plenty of time to talk at the end. So let me go right to the PowerPoint here, which is here. Yeah. Okay, so you should all see that. This is my anti-social media. There I am. And what I'm going to do in my talk today is I'm going to pretty much focus on Facebook because that's not the one the kids are using, by the way. I had a conversation with Brianne right before I came on here, and she tells me, and I'm sure that's right, that the kids are not on Facebook. They're on Instagram, they're on TikTok. So that's where the action is. I suspect, though, us folk, those who are above 50, 55, 60, we're on Facebook. And also Facebook illustrates, I think, what's going on with these others too, in terms of social media is in it, to make money. Although Facebook in the beginning, it sounded like, Mark Zuckerberg sort of had a more high-minded purpose, at least that's what he said. So I'm just going to go quickly through the history here. And it's illustrative of many of these companies, pretty much all of these companies, how they develop, they start small, they develop, and they become outsized. And it's an interesting, they make a huge problem for many of us, but let's get started. So Facebook, these are some facts, but let me give you more of a history. So in 2003, Mark Zuckerberg built a website called FaceMash while attending Harvard University. He placed photos from 9 houses in pairs next to each other and asked people to vote for who was hotter. In 2004, he launched something called the Facebook, which expanded to other Ivy League colleges. In 2004, Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal, invested in the company. No dummy he. In 2006, Facebook opened to everyone over 13 with an email address. In the intervening years, it developed softwares and new ways to interact. In October 2008, Facebook announced its international headquarters would relocate to Dublin, Ireland. Guess why? Taxes. Less tax. By 2010, there were 500 million users. I mean, that's how fast these things can develop. In 2010, groups were announced. There was an IPO offering in 2012 at a share price of $38. Oh, should have bought it then. In 2011, Facebook played an organizational role in the Arab Spring. Remember the Arab Spring? It turned out in many ways to be the Arab Winter. But in any event, everyone's on Twitter, on Facebook, let's revolt. But, it didn't work out for the most part. In 2014, over 1 billion users were clicking on Facebook using a mobile device. 2015, Facebook's algorithm was revised in an attempt to filter out false or misleading information. It relied on users to flag stories and allowed satirical content, which is good for me because I publish satires. In 2016, Zuckerberg outlined a 10-year vision based on 3 main pillars: AI, increased global connectivity, and virtual and augmented reality. Following the 2016 presidential election, Facebook announced it would combat fake news by using fact checkers from sites like factcheck.org and the Associated Press. In 2017, Facebook announced the beta launch of Facebook Spaces, a virtual reality version of Facebook for Oculus VR goggles. In other words, you wear these things and you sort of be in your own world. So the thrust is to get away from physical reality as much as possible. In 2018, Facebook announced it would launch a dating service. So when they announced that, shares in Match Group fell by 22%. That's another service. In 2018, Facebook said it had deleted 17 accounts related to the 2016 election. So they were big during the Trump campaign in 2016 and in 2020. In 2019, criticized for its role in vaccine hesitancy, Facebook said it would provide its users with authoritative information on the topic of vaccines. In 2020, several major companies announced they would pause advertising on Facebook for a month in support of Stop the Hate for Profit campaign, which claimed the company was not doing enough to remove hateful content. And that's an interesting issue. How much should a social media company do to remove hateful content? And what is hateful content? We have freedom of speech in this country. The idea is, according to the Supreme Court decision back in 1919, unless you yell fire in a crowded theater, in other words, unless you make it so people are physically endangered, you can pretty much say whatever you want. This isn't like Germany, where if you say anything about the Holocaust, if you deny the Holocaust, they can prosecute you. Here you can deny the Holocaust all day on Facebook, have followers. Anyway, after the 2020 presidential election, Facebook tweaked its news feed to quantify the trustworthiness and quality of a news source, which is something Twitter doesn't want to do with Elon Musk. He said, everything goes. He's for an open sort of Wild West kind of communication network. In February 2021, Facebook blocked Australian viewers from sharing or viewing news content after the Australian government tried to regulate Facebook. Now, there's lots of calls in this country for regulation of social media. I think the governor of Utah recently did something where kids couldn't go on social media. That's going to be litigated, but you're going to see a lot of litigation about that going forward, about if the government tries to regulate these things. And many people say they should, and count me in on that group. On June 4th, Trump was suspended by Facebook for 2 years. This was a while ago. He's back now. I think he's back now. In October, I'm not sure though. In October 2021, Facebook changed its name to Meta as it shifted its focus to building the metaverse. The change does not affect the name of Facebook's social networking service. So it's still Facebook, but it's owned by Meta. If your stock, it's Meta. Instead, it is similar to the creation of Alphabet as Google's parent company in 2015. In November 2021, Facebook said it would shut down its facial recognition technology, as well as other biometric systems in its future products. So they were going for this, you've probably seen this biometric thing, you know, they take your face and that's how they identify you. I recently, a few weeks ago, we took a cruise to Alaska, my wife and I. And when we got back to they took a picture of each of us before we got on the ship. And then when we hit the ports, you know, you'd run around for a day and then you come back to the ship. And before you get on the ship, they put this thing in front of your face. And the way they recognize you was through your face. You know, didn't even have to say who I was, never said a word. Just boom, okay, you look good, you're on. I guess if I failed, I had still my little card with me, so that would have been the backup. But that was the basic system. Anyway, Facebook said they wouldn't do it. Maybe that's too much information, people felt. You know, today, you know, I guess this audience, respect is over 50, but the idea is, you know, there was some privacy back in the day, as they say. That's gone. I mean, today pretty much everything is public, if not everything, but lots of things. You know, if I want to know where you live, easily done. How much your house is worth, no problem. What it looks like, got it. Phone number, probably. Income, I could find that out fairly easily. So, and whatever you put out, of course, on the internet or on social media stays there. Just another, you know, problem. You know, there's no real eraser on the pencil. You know, once it's out there, someone's going to screenshot it, or you know, it'll be out there somewhere. And you got to be careful what you put out there. But of course, when you're young, which is a time in life when you're not that careful, at least I'll speak for myself. Thank God this stuff wasn't around when I was younger, because I would have put out some crazy stuff. And, you know, as an adult, I would have had to speak to that. And I would have said, I'm a different person, which is true. We all are. Anyway, Facebook has it's a big company. It has 63,000 people, which is, you know, big. So let me go over some of the statistics I have here. It had 63,000 employees. They recently cut some, which is interesting. Close to 3 billion users worldwide. I mean, the impact of social media, we think, you know, in the United States, of course, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And Facebook now has done a thing where they're offering countries free internet, as long as it's sponsored by Facebook. And that's, you know, it's like having a company to really control almost like whatever the citizens see. And most countries have turned it down. I think a few, though, have accepted it. 90% of its users live outside the United States. Now, why is that important? Well, Facebook does moderation on some of this stuff. You know, I mentioned separating, you know, false from not false, which is tricky. You know, how to fact check something takes time. I mean, Facebook has a lot of money, so arguably they could put a lot of people on the case, but they want to make more money, right? The capitalist system, make as much as you can. You know, he who dies with the biggest bank account wins. So that's an issue. But anyway, there were many fewer fact checkers in these other countries. I mean, particularly these like Philippines and in Africa, how they have anybody. So these folks with their Facebook accounts, and many of them do, are getting all kinds of rotten information. Fake news is much more prevalent in other places than here, and it's plenty prevalent here. So that's and social media is part of the reason we've had so much divisiveness in the country, and that's the idea of the lecture, right? The social media dividing us. Certainly, we've seen that in the presidential election. You know, Trump, back in 2016, who'd have thunk Trump would become president? Pretty much nobody. All the polls were saying, I think all the polls, all the ones that I know were saying that Clinton was going to win. I mean, everyone I knew, except for a friend of mine who teaches at NYU, he's a professor in the communications department. He said, Trump's going to win. And I said, well, what have you been drinking? And he said, yeah, he's going to drink. I said, why do you think that? He said, well, he's a follower of Neil Postman, who I will also recommend. Postman, I went to NYU too. Postman was on my dissertation committee. And Postman published a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death back in 1984. This was when, social media wasn't around, but Postman's thesis was, television was around. And Postman's thesis was television has pretty much killed reading. And television is an entertainment medium. And so if you want to be successful in politics and other fields, you're going to have to be entertaining. People could care less about your policies. They want to be entertained. And he said, look, in this 2016 election, you got two candidates who are out there, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Marty, which one do you think is the more entertaining? I don't care about your politics. I said, well, clearly Trump, without a doubt, the more entertaining. And this guy, you never know what's going to be. People are on it, who knows what will come out of his mouth. He's just endlessly entertaining. And I don't mean in a good sense. I mean, just, it's like a road crew, the car crash on the road. Everyone's slowing down to watch the crash because, it's of interest. And so compared to Hillary, he was like a 10 on entertainment. She was a 2. I mean, I liked her policies. I voted for her. But, Trump had the entertainment factor. And he became the candidate through entertainment, right through The Apprentice. And had Postman been alive today with the social media, it even more makes his case that we're an entertainment culture. And so that's where truth goes out the window. Of course, I write satire, and I can tell you that base of satire is fake news, often exaggeration, hyperbole, and fake news is entertaining. I know, that's the deal. Real news is often boring. When Trump goes on TV and looks like the 4 people in the crowd, he says, wow, this is the biggest crowd ever. And he shows the picture and he says, and you can see it's not. Someone could be such a blatant liar. For many, that's entertainment. And that's what they seem to be looking for rather than truth. So that's a problem. And of course, then they spread the fake news as truth. And then there's this virality where in the good old days, as we would say, I suspect this group, if you had some cockamamie idea or sort of oddball thing that, couldn't possibly be true, how much could you spread it? Maybe at your office, you go down to the bar if you're a drinker and talk to the bartender, your family, a few of your friends. How far would it go? But today, everyone's a broadcaster. So, you put something out there, it's picked up by a group, they have friends, they repost or retweet to their friends, and so on and so on and so on. So all kinds of crazy stuff gets out there, and these different social media sites like Facebook have algorithms and they have news feeds. So on these news feeds, people go to Facebook for the news, let's say. So what's at the top of the feed? Because you're not going to go like 4,000 clicks down to see what's there. And the top of the feed are things that Facebook thinks will interest you because they want to capture your attention, because they put ads on these things and you can click and go to ads. Facebook's revenue is ad-based. And so what interests people? Well, not the boring truth. They don't want to hear statistics about health policy or affirmative, whatever the statistics are that make up the basis of the policies. They don't even want to hear about the policies. They want to hear about personalities. They want to hear about people doing crazy stuff. They want to hear about this kind of thing. And so that's what drives the news. And that's why in Postman's thesis, in Amusing Ourselves to Death, which is the book I highly recommend. It's as relevant today as it was in 1984. And I know so because, when I look to see sometimes what journalists write about, they're always referencing Postman. So, today's journalists know about this stuff and they think that he was onto something. And he was. He clearly was. All right. So anyway, let's get back to social media. So I'm giving you some revenue there. Facebook makes 85% of its revenue through advertising. So Facebook equals money, and it's all a money game. Facebook, by the way, owns, if you didn't know, Instagram, WhatsApp, which I use, Messenger, which I don't use, but some of you may use. There's the graph of ad revenue for Facebook. You can tell the company's making money hand over fist. Growth of Facebook users. So pretty much the world is going universally viral. You know, you go to poor places, everyone seems to have some way to get on the internet. You know, a bowl of rice and, you know, crappy smartphone, but they're on the internet somehow. Okay, that's the world. All right, that's some more statistics, but let me keep on going. So I mentioned before, Zuckerberg originally said, I mean, this is his moral position, that it's great to have people connected because it'll be a better world if we're all connected. There's really no proof of that. It's an interesting philosophy, but why would you think it would be a better world if we're all connected? Particularly if it's a world where people aren't reading much. So you don't even have a group that's got a lot of knowledge about history or other things. It's a group that just knows what's going on today and what's going on in the neighborhood and what's going on, you know, whatever. Or that perhaps people are inherently good. That was his maybe philosophy, that down deep we're all inherently good. Okay, but really, aren't there people that are, I wouldn't say they're inherently bad or inherently good, but there are plenty of people who do bad things. I mean, learn history. What about all these dictators? What about, you know, Hitler? And also the population seems to go along with it. So, you know, Hitler wasn't overthrown. They tried to blow him up in a meeting once, but I mean, you know, the population didn't really resist. So in the idea, the philosophy that people are basically good needs to be questioned. But I'm not sure that he genuinely believes that, but who knows what he says this, so even take him at face value. It's a disprovable philosophy. Okay, so going back to Facebook and these other things. So pretty much today, pretty much most people, certainly in the United States, are on it. And so what does it do in terms of socialization? Well, I'm guessing this group was growing up in the 50s and 60s. I mean, when we grew up, you know, we grew up without the social media. So, you know, we grew up, wanted to see your friends. You wouldn't see them virtually. You'd see them, you know. I grew up in Brooklyn. I'd see them when I played stickball. We all were on the street playing stickball. And then we go to the movies or we go to parties. And we'd all see in school, we'd all see each other, and we lived with the telephone. So in that sense, you wouldn't see a person, you'd call them up and you talk over the phone. But for the most part, it was in-person relating. And, you know, you learn behaviors by practicing them. So, you know, we knew how to talk to people because we were talking to people and learning through doing. So one of the problems, a major problem that young people with social media, is there's less and less in-person communication. More and more of it is done through social media. So when they are in person, you sort of lose the behavior, never learn the behavior, how to communicate with people in person, which makes it difficult to do that kind of thing. Also, and this is with Instagram, and this is when I talked about, you know, teenage girls on Instagram. Instagram's a lot of pictures. It's a lot of, you know, that kind of stuff. So people are putting out, because they want the public to see, you know, there's always a public face and a private face. You know, there was a book by Irving Goffman, I think in the 50s, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. And the idea was, you know, even then, you know, you go to the office, you're not going in your pajamas, right? Well, in the 50s, pretty much people wore suits and ties, you know, women wore very dresses, etc. And then when you got home, you take it off and, you know, go into your other clothing and present yourself that way. But with social media, people want to present themselves to the public in a way that probably doesn't correspond to what they look like or what they seem like in real life. Or they feel badly that they don't look the way others are presenting themselves, right? So if you're girls, other girls present themselves as drop dead gorgeous. And of course, it's more for looks, it's more for girls and boys, because that's the way it's been in society. Arguably, it's changing somewhat today, but not that much. I suspect still, guys really, and also the way people rate themselves. I mean, guys don't particularly rate themselves on necessarily on how they look, although that's become, I think, more so than, definitely a lot more so than when I was growing up. Guys are taking much more care in terms of how they look and present themselves. But still, for guys, it's about other things for a lot of it. But for many pretty young girls, the idea is, looks are important, and these other girls are coming across this way. It makes you feel bad. You don't have to look that way, or people are presenting themselves and probably lying about how well they're doing. And you say, "Well, I'm not doing that well. Look how well they're doing." Or else it sets you up for wanting to create a phony image also. So everyone's just phoning in their images up. So your avatars are all these, pretend things. And so you're kind of you're disconnected because you're putting up a false front right from the get-go. And then you have to maintain that front with others. And then how do you really have friends? The idea of friendship is not to have a front, right? You can have a friends with acquaintances, I suppose, or people you don't know, who cares? But with friends, where you really want to talk to someone and communicate on a deeper level, how can you communicate on a deeper level if you're putting up a front? I mean, it sort of belies the idea of friendship. And Facebook itself, in many ways, belies the idea of friendship, because you talk about Facebook friends. It's not the idea of, will your Facebook friend lend me $50 or $1,000 if I need that? Will your Facebook friend visit me in the hospital if I'm in the hospital for something? So it sort of dilutes the notion of even the term friend. And of course, one of the things you do is, I'm a member of a group called General Semantics, and one of the things we do in General Semantics is we index terms. So friend one is in friend two, is in friend three. So Facebook friend is not the same as a friend in real life, judged by, will they be there for you and will you be there for them? Which is what the definition of friendship for many people was. So that's a problem. And then it causes people to more isolate themselves. There was Sherry Turkle, is a professor at MIT in the communication department there, and she wrote a very good. Her philosophy is said, we're together but more alone with each other. And there was a book, Bowling Alone. When bowling was a big deal when I was growing up. The nice part about bowling wasn't so much that you were, becoming a great athlete. But you bowl in leagues often. You'd have a team, you'd be out there as you were bowling. The same thing with stickball. I mean, I love stickball, but I love stickball as much for the game as for the kidding around during it. It was the fun just of being there with other people, and you would joke around and you'd talk to other people. The communication was almost as important as what happened in the game. I mean, okay, so your team wins, you have bragging rights among your little group. But the idea was the fun of talking. And of course, with guys, often communication occurs through activity. Girls are better at communication in general. So it happens that girls can just talk with each other without having an activity. Guys typically have to play sports, watch TV, talk over sports, or whatever. So that was fun growing up. But today, you really don't have that in-person kind of communication, and because people aren't getting together so much in physical groups, we have people getting together in virtual groups. And one of the problems with virtual groups is, people are pack animals for the most part. We want to be part of the herd of the group we're in. Very few people want to go against the group because you'll be ostracized if you go against the group, and then you're not in the group. And you want to be in the group because you joined the group. Why would you want to be outside the group? You want to be an independent thinker. You're not a groupie. And there are people like that. So that's fine, but people want to be parts of some groups. So they go along with you go along to get along, as we used to say at work in some instances. We've all done it. And so the group puts out stuff. Part of the reason, in many ways, the country, I feel, is so divided is because if a group puts out something that, even though is baloney, not true, you go along with it because you like the people in the group, and you don't want to seem to be the renegade, the one who's like objecting to this. You want to be a good team player. You're going out there for the team. So I mean, who knows how many Trump supporters really believe the crazy stuff he's saying? Really believe it? I'm sure some do, particularly the uneducated. But I suspect many of them don't care. Who cares if it's true or false? It's an excuse to me to get together with my friends and bash the other side. That I like to do. So, if he says crazy stuff, who cares? It doesn't affect me personally. It's not like I'm at work, and if I'm saying something wrong, something will happen to the company, we'll lose money. Nah, I'm saying crazy stuff. It's a way, it's almost if you ever in a fraternity or a sorority. I was in college back in, I was in a fraternity for a while. And to pledge a fraternity, you had to do all kinds of, stupid stuff, say stupid stuff. And it would bond you closer together because it would show you would do stupid stuff to be part of the group. And even groups that do good work, the Kiwanis, whatever, they get all the kinds of crazy stuff. They get together to do good work. But people like to act silly and dopey, and so in groups. So if you go, and that's fine, but some of the fake news is not just silly and dopey. It can be downright dangerous because it causes people to act in ways that are not good, and doubt things that probably are true, that could be helpful, but they don't want to even consider it because it's an issue. Okay, so let me go here, just on the what's here on the PowerPoint. So Facebook says it will combat fake news. They're doing a tepid job at it. They suspended him. So there's Mark Zuckerberg. If you've never seen him, he launched Face Smash. There's Facebook's headquarters, one hacker away, because that's a play on, hacking the system. Basically, Facebook, all this stuff, you come up with this stuff, it's a young person's game. Because the idea is you want to be, who's going to put in this kind of work, 14 hours a day doing this thing, once you're, more established, maybe you have a family, et cetera. So, et cetera. There's Facebook, there's the Arab Spring. That didn't work out. They banned Trump. He didn't care. He started his own social media company, Truth Social. I think Twitter banned him too when they said he could come back. He wants to do the Truth Social because he can make more money on Truth Social. The problem is, how do you get people to go on your own social media thing? So here are some questions we can ask. Have Americans given up on their freedoms from surveillance, manipulation, and exploitation? Well, that's true. Well, that's not true. That's a question. But when we were younger, privacy was a big deal. You didn't want people to invade your privacy. With social media, it's really about, oh, please, let me give away as much of my privacy as possible. I'll be more popular the more I give away. So, people are just, oh, I ate a hamburger at, whatever place it is. 2 minutes later, I did this, I did that. The idea is to make your life as public as possible. Is Facebook reducing human reactions to the clicking of buttons? Yeah, I mean, also you can post things anonymously, not necessarily on Facebook, but you could set up phony accounts and post things anonymously, which may be believed. That's another issue. Another question, should Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act be revised? So this act basically allows places like Facebook and other to say, well, the fact that bad information or dangerous information, some of it, is being posted, that's not our business. We're really not in the business of policing information. We're in the business of allowing people to say stuff. It's like we're like a highway. You drive there, and we're not in the business of saying if you got a bomb in your car. We're just a road. And so, but should it be revised so they should have some obligation to see what they're putting out there? They're not putting it out, but they're enabling things to be put out. Should it be revised to see if they could be held accountable for some of the information that's just very dangerous and very wrong that's put out? With the vaccine, there was vaccine deniers. Actually, one of them is running for president now, Robert Kennedy Jr., who during the COVID epidemic. Now, whatever your position is, taking a vaccine really saved us from a much worse situation. Particularly also for people who were vulnerable to getting COVID, more particularly than others. But basically, the vaccine really, helped. We still have an issue with COVID, but it made it much better. So for public health purposes, to go against it was really to go against life and death. So certainly that's one kind of information that can be so bad that could influence people. And leaders who would say, don't take the vaccine. And so many of these leaders who would say, well, make up your own mind, I don't know if it's true, etc. Pretty much all of them took the vaccine. So it's so hypocritical to say something like that and then wind up taking it yourself because you're smart enough to know that that to protect your health, it's a good idea. So anyway. So is it eroding democracy worldwide? Yeah, well, it might be. It's interesting. The Economist magazine does a poll every year about democracies, and they rank them depending on how democratic they are. And the U.S. used to always they put them in 4 categories. And the U.S. always used to be up in a full democracy. That was the top democracy category. And the last year or two, we slipped down to flawed democracy. In other words, the idea is some of our norms are eroding, and that's really because people don't really necessarily prize democracy that much. And they've done polls, and they segregate it by age cohorts. And in those polls, they indicate that a lot of younger people are saying that, democracy may not be the best form of government. And then actually, we might be better off with some kind of autocrat running the system. And of course, what they're thinking of is a autocrat that works for them, and it's a wise, decent, smart autocrat. And if we were guaranteed to get that kind of person, I'd like that system better than democracy. The problem is, of course, is you're not guaranteed to get that person, and actually you probably won't. And even if you get that person, when they're gone, either through an overthrow or they die, you'll get someone often much worse. And there's no stability in that system. So, for so much of our history, since the Constitution, we've been a democracy, and people have always said things in praise of democracy. And what's happening now is many young people are not praising it, and up to a third. And then they show you by age, and the people sort of in our age bracket, which are sort of over 50s, over 55, are way more defending of democracy than the younger generation. So that's an issue. That's the Communication Act, as I was talking to you about, and there is Facebook making us stupid. Now, I would say yes, but of course AI has the possibility of making us more stupid. But you could argue the internet is making us stupid, or you could argue the other way. It's making us less stupid. The argument for making us stupid is you don't have to know anything in your head. You just have to know where to click to get the information. And there is some truth to that. I mean, when we were growing up, we used to think a smart person would know, like, who is president, who is the fourth president of the United States? Come up with an answer. Wow, that person knows stuff. Okay, well, today, if you said to someone, who's the fourth president of the United States, they'd say, I'll tell you in a second or a couple of seconds. They Google it and they have it. So knowing specific information is easily gotten. I mean, how much do you really have to know? And what value is it also, arguably, to know this stuff? I mean, unless you're giving a history lecture, and even then you can give the lecture, well, you'd have to know it to give the lecture. But unless this is your field, who cares? You can Google it. But okay, so you have the information, but you still have to, if you wanted to write about it, say to communicate to others, you still have to know something. Well, this is where AI comes in. You really wouldn't. All you have to say is you need to write an essay on the power of the presidency. Write an essay on the power of the presidency, how it's changed over the last 50 years. So, back in the day, you'd have to go open a book, get some information, write about it. Before AI, you still have to Google it, get information, write about it. But with AI, what you can do is give the topic and say, write a paper on the power of the presidency in the last 50 years. And the AI program would spit it out. And it'd be pretty good. And so how much do you really know other than how to type or, how to punch it, the alphabet, how to punch in some information to get what you need. And so what does that mean? If you don't have to write anything, if you don't have to look up things really and get into it, how does that affect what we say is stupid? And then how do you define intelligent and stupid? Well, you could define it different ways. One of the ways often people define intelligence is verbal intelligence, as knowing information. That's one way, but it's really not the only way to define intelligence. You can define it different ways. Someone could be, let's say, a good auto mechanic, really intelligent around cars. And, the Harvard professor is a total dummy. But in terms of, I think the more important thing is, rather than the specifics of knowing information, which I've always thought of as intelligent, is critical thinking. I mean, to me, intelligence is defined about critical thinking and ability to solve problems through that thinking. And the question is, are we losing that? In my opinion, are we losing the idea to the capacity to think critically and more slowly? So one of the other issues with social media and the internet is the quick response. So you get something, someone posts something, and it's not like people take time to think about it. It's like boom, either retweet it without even ascertaining its source, or reacting to it quickly without thinking about your reaction. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts, and now it's time to get some of yours. So if anyone has something they want to say or talk about, this is go at it. Any one of you three musketeers out here want to say something?
If anyone has any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and we can go ahead and get those answered. All right, Marty, it looks like we don't have any questions from the audience. So anybody for any last questions? If not, I'd like to thank you all so much for attending, and especially thank you, Marty, for the wonderful presentation.
Well, I want to thank you, Brianne, for the opportunity. Again, these are my views. Brianne had nothing to do with it, even as OLLI of the university. So that's the thing. And thanks a lot for anyone who's attended here, and have a great luau if you're going to that the rest of the day.
Excellent. Thanks,
Marty. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Take care, everyone.
Take care, folks. Bye-bye.